everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Up Your Confidence podcast. I'm excited today with another conversation. Today, our guest is going to be Apriel Biggs. Apriel is a dear friend of mine. I always love to talk about how I met people, so I'll share how we met with Apriel shortly. But I'd love to read her bio because, as you know, that's super important for me to give her flowers. Apriel is a dynamic executive with more than 15-year experience in technical training, consulting. She is a technologist, a thought leader, and a change agent known for bringing humanity to corporate workspaces, which is going to be our goal, our conversation today. She's skilled with strategic planning for nationwide implementation, cross-functional leadership, and development of high-functional personnel. She holds all the accolades that you can imagine for somebody that is in a Scrum. That's where we really met. And she has a PMP, she has CSP, CSPO certification. She is an executive leader at many of the companies that we know around here. Her professional experience span aeronautic, hospitality, commercial real estate, pageantry. Wow, we need to talk about that. And most recently, academia, and also she's going to divinity school. So that's going to be exciting. She's known for her candor, yes, vision, and knack for bridge building. Apriel is committed to helping women in tech craft their own leadership journey while maintaining the sense of self. She's the founder of Blagile, an organization dedicated to amplifying and elevating Black and Brown voice in agile. Apriel is extremely passionate about creating spaces for people to thrive at work. So welcome to the Up Your Confidence podcast, Apriel. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Lisette, and I'm so excited for everyone who's going to be listening. I'm hoping that, that this is informational, but really that it really helps pour into your soul. That's really important to me. And so anyone who's looking to up their confidence, I think that's a soul matter. So I'm really hoping that you get what you need from today.
Oh my God, this is going to be fun. I can't wait. So let's start it. And I know you and I, how did we meet? Let me go back. I think we met 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. I was stuck in our house as part of Blagile was not even born. We were part of a mentoring group, and then we used to meet like on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. That's how our friendships are. We were like maybe the only two female in a group of like all African American and Black and Brown men, just talking about agile and how we can grow and inspire other folks, right? So from there, just right in front of us, Blagile got created, and I'm so excited of where you're taking Blagile, and where the future of Blagile. So can you tell us, like, how did the idea of creating Blagile even started for you?
Yeah, so thank you so much for asking me about that, because I'm really passionate about it. So essentially, right, like you said, in the middle of the pandemic, there were maybe like 7 or 8 of us, 8 Blagilists, I'll say, that were on these bi-weekly calls with Brandon Rains. And so if you don't know who that brother is, you should definitely look him up and follow him on LinkedIn and check him out, because he's extremely humble and just brilliant, quite frankly. And so when we started the whole group, the idea came from our conversation, our little mastermind, if you will, with Brandon. There's over 100,000 Scrum Masters in the world. And so a lot of the certifications that you and I hold, right, people don't know about. So I'm going to talk, there's 2 different organizations that people typically get their Scrum certifications, right? There's scrum.org and then there's Scrum Alliance. So I'm going to talk about the Scrum Alliance framework because that's my framework. So you enter in, you become your introductory route. It's changed, right? There's other designations now for developers and things like that. But when I came through, it was you became a Scrum Master. Then you became a product owner. And then after that, there were these 2 other designations that no one knew about and no one had. And so since then, they've introduced what's called a certified Scrum professional, which says that you have essentially mastered at some level the foundations and the fundamentals of Scrum. You have the ability to essentially lead Scrum teams. And then there's 2 certifications that are left, which to date, there are only 9
Okay,
Black
nice.
folks in the world that
Yes.
have these last 2 designations. That's
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
Okay. So the app, so it's certified scrum master, certified product owner. So those are kind of like parallels. Then the next one up is certified scrum professional. The next designation is the certified team coach. And so that essentially means that you have the ability to coach up and train and lead teams, in an organization. And then the final designation is certified enterprise coach, which essentially is that you are the coach of an organization or of organizations, and you are coaching senior leaders on what it means to actually lead agile transformations on a much larger scale. And so taking them through that thought leadership, that change management, and coaching other Scrum professionals as they lead their teams through the transition from, I'll say, other kinds of development methodologies and frameworks to an agile approach. So at the time, right, because we just got Femi just got his last one, right? I think he was the newest one. So before that, when we first met in 2020, I think there were like 7 or 8. There's
Six,
been two,
6 or 7 even.
yeah, there
Yep.
weren't a lot, right? So there were 2 since 2020. And I think
Yes.
one was the end of 2022, and there was
There
another
hasn't been
woman
in 2023 yet.
nothing in 2023. So essentially, as we were talking, right, I was like, this makes no sense. And so collectively, our small group began talking about, why is it that we do not have more CTCs and CECs? And so we began to talk about the barriers to entry for those last 2. And so if you guys go check them out, you'll see that, there's formal and foundational coaching that's required. And so obviously there's a cost, right, to that, a significant cost, like a 5-digit cost to those. And so for many Scrum Masters, right, who've graduated school, who probably also have student loan debt, they're also, well on their way to families, incurring a $30,000 or a $16,000 training certification was hard and difficult.
Yes.
So I thought it would be helpful for us to take this small community and make it significantly larger, so that we could at least start to bridge the gap and to create a pipeline, if you will, from Scrum Master to CSP to team coach to enterprise coach, and to actually have a support system for Blagilists who, essentially get their certification and then are kind of thrown into leading a Scrum team without really knowing what it is, what they're doing, or how to begin to translate the conversation of what's happening on their teams to leadership.
Yeah. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. And we all on the path, and it's just mind-blowing to know that there's only like 8 of us in the whole world. Like, what? So this is a strong mission. This is a dedication that Blagile has a lot of future, because we need to create a pipeline. So you are leading that effort. So kudos to you. Now, I saw that, you and I have been knowing each other since 2020, and I've learned a lot from you. But one of my favorite part is the other side of you that people don't know, right? Like, if people know Apriel, at least for me, I felt like, whoa, what? And it's the aspiring and the motivating part, which we all have. But yours is really grounded in your faith. So can we talk about, your faith a little bit, and then what drove you to, get into divinity schools as you are doing right now? Because I think that's going to lay a foundation to what we really want to talk about today.
Sure. I think, again, as a Black woman, right, in America, one of the first foundations that I ever learned, was how to pray, right? I can remember, being with my Nana, on the side of my bed as a little kid, learning, Our Father who art in heaven. And so as I've gotten older, especially in corporate environments, which can be really crazy and really toxic and really unhealthy, I found or myself leaning on a variety of different things, right, in order to just cope with the day to day. Like, I'm just going to go out, I'm going to have a glass of wine, like whatever. And just somehow it just didn't seem like it was enough. I would be like, nope, I'm just going to sleep all day. That wasn't enough. I'm going to talk to somebody. That wasn't enough. And so I found that every single time I felt like my back was up against a wall with a horrible boss, a crazy coworker, needing to find a new job, not knowing where to go, whatever it was from a professional standpoint, I found myself going back to my faith. And so um I will say that I, in the spirit of transparency, am not in divinity school because, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think this is the place for me. No, I came kicking and screaming. I'm into those folks who who enter in some kind of graduate program because that's where they feel like, they're called. Kudos to you. But ultimately, I've just found that obedience is better than sacrifice.
Amen.
And so it was just easier for me to just say, all right, I'm going to eat my broccoli first. And so if this is where I'm supposed to be, I trust that there's something for me in this journey as I'm supposed to give and pour out into the world. And so again, as a Blagilist, right, as an agilist, one of the things, the principles that we hold dear is servant leadership. Um, and in Matthew, it says the greatest amongst you must first be a servant, right? And so
Mm.
I just think it's so interesting that the path that we've chosen from a professional standpoint talks about being of service, and that also has a faith-based context as well. So for me, the two, technology leadership and being of service in this world, and ultimately from a faith context, just really dovetails all together.
I love it because when you told me, and I told you this privately, that leadership is something that I'm always interested in. I'm a student of leadership, right? And I agree with you that it comes from different angle. I'm going to actually a leadership conference by TD Jakes in not doing an ad for that, but if you want to join, sure, right? To leadership conference in Orlando in May, and
Ah,
because I've been following a lot of there's a lot of information, right? Especially that servant leadership. And to really be a honor your servant leadership, it has to be grounded in something and have it grounded in your faith. Because sometimes, as a Black woman or as any woman for that matter, right? Incorporate. And when you were mentioning that, I just thought about how difficult, if people have any idea how difficult it is to just be a woman and a Black woman, or even an immigrant like me, just anytime you have any other layer in your identity that is not white, how difficult it is to be in corporate America. Can we talk about that a little bit, and
100%.
why that is a goal for you to, to create space for people at work?
Yeah, I think just to that first piece, I think one of the things that DEIB, with everything that's going on in the world, is hot, right? Like, it's like the latest buzzword. And so one of the things that I feel that a lot of the DEIB work is missing at work is this whole conversation
Can
around.
we say what does DEIB mean? Because not everybody is probably pertaining to that.
Oh yeah, sure. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
Okay.
So it's basically just missions around making certain that folks who identify as diverse, right, are included and they feel
Belong.
like they belong.
Yes.
Um, but what I was going to say is that any of those kinds of activities typically like miss the intersectionality, right? So the juxtaposition of being a woman and being Black and being an immigrant and also maybe working remote, or working in the office while the rest of the team is remote. So all of these kind of like Rubik's Cube factors, and how that might make someone feel excluded or might contribute to cultures where it might seem like the deck is stacked against a certain group or a certain person. And so I think there's an opportunity for a lot of our corporate programs and structures to begin to look at the intersectionality of a lot of different things that are making their workplace suck, for lack of a better way to put
Yes. Yes. Yes.
it.
Yes.
And then to your other question, you had asked me about, what is it like to be a Black woman? Why is this important to me? And so one of the things that I believe is that leadership, and again, right, like kind of blurring the lines between the sacred and the secular, but leadership is about discipleship, and discipleship is about relationship,
Mm.
and relationship is about our ability to be with each other. And in a day and age where we are so connected, we have so many different ways to stay connected, get connected, see this, see that. We have lost the ability to be with people. And so we create labels, which exclude folks. We, are in this very much like it's got to be this or that. Like, oh, this is only for on-site employees. Oh, this is only for off-site employees. Oh, this is only for women. But what about LGBT
Yes.
women? Or men? What about folks who are brown and not necessarily Black? Again, right? Like, just where is it where we can look to actually be in relationship, where we can be with people, where we can sit with people, while in the midst of the pandemic, that people have lost family members, people have lost loved ones, right? Not just to COVID, but also to just regular life, to cancer,
Yeah.
to
Stress.
just regular old age, right? And so we've lost the ability, I feel like, to be connected. And so as women, it's really important for me because we are often responsible for being like the glue, if you will, for our families and for our communities, and sometimes at work, right? Because we can emote and we can feel, what's happening in the environments around us. And the weight gets hard. And then where do women go? When do women go when they are empty? And we always hear, oh, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
But if everyone is always dipping their spoon in, where are women going to replenish, right? And so even that is an adage that we don't really talk about, is that you're not supposed to pour directly from in your cup. You're supposed to pour from the overflow. The
Mm.
overflow is what, other folks can just come. And if you think of a fountain, the overflow,
Yes.
you just put your cup up and then, you walk away because it's full. You don't ever have to dip your fountain,
Yes.
your cup into the fountain, because the overflow is just so much. And so for me, as I'm a woman, as I think about um, what kind of planet I'm going to give to my daughter, what kind of planet are her children going to inherit, I just want to do my part in order to pour into the lives and the souls of women so that their cups can remain full, and that people in their lives that need them can get from the overflow.
Oh, I love that analogy. I've never heard that, because I mean, fountain, we can all go and drink from it, but a cup that is just fill up just enough is not even enough to share with others, right? So to that point, do you think, how are you envisioning this workplace humanity role? Let's talk about how it should look like, in a real sense in an organization, right? A secular corporate environment. How would that look like in real scenario? I'm curious about it. I'm sure you have thought about that. How would that look like?
So there's a couple of places. So one, I think a lot of folks probably would say, oh, that feels like an HR function, and it totally could be. One of the things, at least from my studies perspective, that's really fascinating is about this whole idea of chaplaincy. And so typically we never ever hear of a chaplain until you go to a hospital, or someone is sick and
Yes.
typically like dying, right? When
Mm-hmm.
something terminal is happening, and the chaplain comes in, and typically to give like last rites, or to pray with the family, or be with the family, or be with a person, in their time
In
of
the
need,
last
right?
time.
That's when
Mm-hmm.
we hear of folks calling on a chaplain. So there is a concept of workplace chaplaincy, which is where people and corporations can hire a chaplain to be with people. And so what would it look like if leaders across organizations were trained to learn how to be with people? And I'm not talking about a therapy kind of way, but in a more human, like the idea of rehumanizing the workplace. How many times have you had to make the decision about having dinner with your husband because you actually had a sitter, or or finalizing a deadline? and you're like, oh, it's only 30 minutes. And you didn't realize that your husband had made a special reservation for you that was only 2 hours long. And the first 30 minutes was going to be someone serenading you. And because he didn't want to ruin the surprise, you stayed and you finished, and then you got there late only to be for 30 minutes. Exactly. And so what would it look like for leaders to be able to be with people, to really truly communicate about what's really important, to really develop teams from a very humanistic perspective, not from these goals and objectives kind of, wishy-washy moral victory kind of place, but to understand the intrinsic values of what's important to the employees that they are serving, right? Because like I said, in my opinion, leadership is about service. So the folks that work for us, how can we be of service to them so that they can show up to be their best and brightest selves every single day? So I remember I had a woman who had a sister who had been diagnosed with cancer. They knew it was terminal. They had given her 3 months to live. At the same time, this woman was also going through a divorce.
Oh gosh.
And so from an organizational standpoint, we were in our busiest season at work, right? Like this was the time where as a team, like we literally committed not to take any vacation.
Oh gosh. I know those.
So that we could be of service to the organization. Additionally, the woman who worked directly under me, so my deputy, had just found out that her partner had cancer.
Oh gosh.
We were a small team. And so then the question becomes, what are we going to do? And so people joke about this, oh, work is not like family. You should never ever say that work is not like family. And then oftentimes many of us are spending more time with the people that we work with than our own families, right? You and I are both mothers of small children.
Yes.
And it hurts our heart to say that, but it's true at some point, right?
Right.
So then as a leader of an organization, I had a decision to make, right? As I asked myself, what am I going to do? Did it make sense for me to beat my staff over the head, recognizing that work wasn't getting done because their heads weren't in the right place because they were worried about people dying, right? And so granted, a lot of leaders might say, hey, Apriel, this is just a regular workplace challenge. But I think it's more about how you navigate this challenge and how you actually show up for your people, and how you're showing up for people and taking pressure off of your people helps them, even in their times of crises, then show up to be their best and brightest self, whatever that looks like on any given day. And some days a person no one works 8 hours a day, let's be honest. So on any given day, someone may show up and, they may schedule be on time for all the Zoom meetings, and they may take all the minutes, and, they may send them out the same day. And they may congratulate and notice their coworkers for doing other amazing jobs, right? Like they may get all the things done on one day, and on another day, they might just sit in a meeting and they might have nothing to say. And that might be their best because of what they're carrying. And so I think for me, workplace humanity, rehumanizing leadership is all about being with people, understanding who your folks are at the core, and being able to then navigate and modify your strategy to be able to help your team deliver results for the organization. And I know it feels like a lot of like buzzwordy kind of stuff, but it all starts with you knowing who folks are and what really drives them. And then in the event where you feel like they're not able to deliver, to be able to carry the water for them, to take the pressure off, and to simply say no.
Yep.
And deal with whatever comes after that.
That's a lot. And I feel like that should have been happen, that should be what every person that carry the name leader should be doing. But again, in reality, that does not happen that way. So a couple of questions that I want to bring to your attention as a woman, right? Why do we feel the sense of like we have the weight of the world on us? Why do we have that as a woman, and then as a leader, being a woman, why does that get amplified again, and how can we, because I really love the analogy of the fountain, right? So how do we create that fountain so that other people can pour from it? Because obviously they're always going to come to us. So how do we create that fountain? I'm interested in that individually for each of us.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'll say my first semester of Div school just stands for Divinity School, y'all. So my first semester of Div school, my second semester rather, we talked about spiritual practices. And so when we think about spiritual practices, people are like, oh yeah, fasting, praying. No, y'all, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
Okay. I was like, okay.
no, I'm talking about saying yes and saying no. I'm talking about establishing boundaries as a spiritual practice. I'm talking about, people talk about this whole idea of the Sabbath, literally taking a whole day where you're not checking email and you
Amen.
literally like have hid your laptop. Like these are spiritual practices. And why are they important? Because they're things that you do to make certain that your soul is intact, right? And so your soul is another word for your heart. So if your heart is scattered, then how can you focus on anything? How can you make certain that your fountain is full if your heart is all over the place? So let's just talk about those two, saying yes and saying no, and this whole idea of boundaries. And so boundaries, oftentimes people think of boundaries as a way to keep people out. But actually, boundaries are a way to keep people in, because it's you saying up front, hey, I'm letting you know what my lines are. And then if you cross these lines, then we have to have a conversation about whether or not I'm deciding to keep you in or not. And so because I value you and I value the relationship that we have, I'm telling you where I draw lines.
Amen.
The idea of yes and no, I know a lot of women have problems with and struggle with. And I did too for a long time. And so here's the one thing that helped me is I've become really good at saying no, because my ability to say no directly affects my ability to say yes. And so I say no because it amplifies my yes. I want to say yes to the things that really light me up. I want to say yes to the things that make my soul sing. I want to say yes to the things that I know that I can do and deliver beyond a shadow of a doubt. So I'm going to say no to the things that I simply cannot do. I'm going to say no to the things that impede my quality of life. I'm going to say no to the things that we know that we have someone else on the team that really should be doing.
That's
I'm going to
true.
say no to taking minutes at meetings simply because I'm the only female on the team.
Nope for that.
I'm going to say no to working on the weekends because I've scheduled time with my husband, my partner, my children, myself, my nail
I need
tech.
my Sabbath, my whole Sabbath.
Exactly. I'm going to say no. But in me saying no, you know what? No, unfortunately, I can't do that on Saturday. I'm more than happy to get to that first thing on Monday morning. And here's when I can have it. Unfortunately, I can't stay. I'm unable to stay until 8 o'clock tonight. I'm happy to pick this back up tomorrow morning. And so that's what it is for me. I feel like it's getting really good at saying no as a way to amplify our yes.
This is great. I mean, we talk in this podcast about boundaries. So I love that the way you define spiritual practice are like your yes, your no, boundary, do your Sabbath, and then your soul, And I just watch, and I will send you this video after this. And this is exactly what she was talking about, Taraji P. Henson, about finding your happiness is within your soul. And sometimes because you are that person that everybody is scooping from, at some point you found like they're scooping at the barrel of your heart, and you like stop. So she was talking about how like she is gonna take some vacation time off to just go replenish herself, you know. So I love that analogy. Like, we need to become a fountain before people, like, I should be bubbling up. And I think when you get to a certain age, that become a practice. I didn't know that I would call it spiritual practice, but I know, especially during the pandemic, since we all been working home remote, it becomes super difficult to have a boundary between work and life. So I'm blessed to have a home office, and I have been excited and proud of myself that sometime on the weekend, I don't even enter my office. Like the whole, like Saturday, like when I close on Friday, I don't even enter. Because if I enter, some work is going to catch
Of
me, you
course.
know? Or some kind of even personal business will catch me, and I do a mental check. So I've been loving that boundary for myself, and I feel excited when I come back Monday, because almost like I'm entering the building of the virtual office, and I can start over instead of just being into the work mode all the time. Because half of you have to find a balance, and there's not always a balance. So I'm happy that you mentioned that. I feel like we have covered this topic a little bit more. One of the things that you mentioned was I want to know, as part of being a leader, what language do you think the language that we use also matter? Because you know that can open a whole nother a can of worm. But I was wondering two things: language and how we listening. And I'm not talking about, I don't want to get into executive crisis and all that, but just how do we show up, right? The way we show up also, because I feel like us women, you know, because we are nurturer, we always want to help everybody, right? Maybe that's part of the boundary conversation too, but you know, the language that we use, does that also impact how we show up? Does that also impact how we at the fountain and people are scooping from us?
Yeah, I definitely think so. So I will tell you, the first time I made it to SLT, the senior leadership team, we had to do this exercise. And since I was new, everyone else had already done it, which is basically called the creation of what an owner's manual. So you think an owner's manual, like you have for your cell phone, for your kids' toys, whatever, your vacuum, everything comes with an owner's manual. We usually don't read it though. But so it tells you how to operate the thing. And so the owner's manual was an exercise that everyone had done, that taught the rest of the leadership team how to operate you. And so I actually got help from another Black woman in HR, and I'm so grateful for her, who agreed to proofread my owner's manual before I actually wrote it. It took me 7 iterations to get this right. I was grossly apologetic in my owner's manual, and I didn't even realize it until Michelle pointed out, your owner's manual is riddled with apology. And it was simple, like, you know, I had a small child at the time, right? Like, my daughter was maybe 9 months old, right?
Okay.
Daycares were
Fresh.
shut down.
Fresh.
And, you know, so, and as I was going through it, right, like I didn't even pay attention. You know, you think by that time you had gotten good, right, at being able to use certain language. And so it permeated even in places where I didn't even realize it. And it took someone else to point it out to me. At which point I had to have a large, long, hard look in the mirror, right? And I had to look at myself. And I literally remember sitting down at my computer, having a conversation with myself about what did I feel like I was apologizing for? And why was I struggling with more empowering, more finite, more crisp language like I had read in my male counterparts? And all of them were white.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stepped away from the exercise. I stepped away from it. And I was like, I'm not in the right headspace to write
I'm
this.
gonna be back.
I'm coming back, right? And I was like, I'll have another iteration for you in a couple of days, because that kind of work was not like 24-hour work, right? It wasn't something that I could just bolster through like the Kool-Aid man. I needed to really sit with myself and really look at myself and really think about who was the woman and who was the leader in this new role that I wanted to show up as, and to write from that perspective. And at that point, that's when it clicked for me that I was writing from a place of lack, and I was writing from a place of not good enough, and I was writing from a place that I hadn't earned a spot, that I had already been seated in.
You already in the spot. Yes. I'm so glad. Oh my God, I'm so glad you're sharing this. This is insightful. But this is reality. I didn't know that you had like a direct experience to this. So I think it's just the spirit that asked me to ask you this question, because this is something. And the reason why I was touching on it, I feel like sometimes it's like this movie. You already have the power.
Of
You
course.
already have the power. Why are we looking for? It's just be. And I think that's the message, is like, just be. But it's so difficult to just be for us for some reason. So
Because we get so many messages, Lisette, about how we are not good enough, right?
that's why we have this
Even
podcast.
after we've
Yes,
arrived,
yes.
let's do it. We get so many messages that we are not good enough. Even after you've gotten the thing, you've gotten the promotion, you've gotten the seat, you've gotten the job, you've gotten the whatever, the certification, you've earned the degree, like it's like some little phantom like joy snatcher is gonna come and rip it right from underneath you, right? Like, it's not really yours. And it's like we have to hold on to it. You know what I mean?
All
Like
the
you have to
time.
struggle to hold on to it. Because if I don't hold on to it, if I don't work late, if I don't do this, if I don't let folks text me after hours, if I don't answer, fill in the blank, then I'm not gonna get to hold on to my seat. When at the end of the day, all that's needed is for you to show up as yourself and to perform from that place.
Yes, because you're already there.
Because you're already there.
Yep.
Because you're already there and it's already yours.
Oh my God, this is so good. I know that I don't want to take too much of your time. This will be a blessing to whoever is going to listen to this, because this conversation is empowering. It's you've been super vulnerable about everything that you share here, Apriel. I have to tell you, because people see the title, they'll see an executive leader, and they're like, oh, you got it. But the way the brain has been wired, the way society has been like attentioning us, and the way we have to show up is a daily work. It's a spiritual, what did you call it? It's a spiritual practices, and I think that's where we should end it. One of the things that we love to ask people on the Up Your Confidence podcast is, what are your confidence habits? What do you do to up your confidence every day? Is it drinking from your lovely cup? Is it exercising? Is it doing your hair? What is it? What is it? Listening to this is my favorite part of the podcast, actually, because everybody has different confidence habits. So I'm all ear.
I'll tell you again, another vulnerable moment. So during the pandemic, I went through a very personally trying situation. And again, I mentioned that I had a small child. And I was worried about myself going into a depression. And I was like, Lord, I have to be there for my daughter. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I remembered watching this movie. Oh my gosh, the title escapes me, but Reese Witherspoon was in the movie. Legally Blonde, that was it.
Oh, yes.
And so she talks about, I think it was like Legally Blonde 2. So she talks, she's the defense attorney for her sorority sister, who is her exercise coach. This woman has like these exercise videos. And so Elle, the character in the movie, is like, there's no way that she could have done it because she exercises, and exercise gives you endorphins, and endorphins, make you happy, and happy people don't commit murder.
Okay.
And so I don't know why that dropped in my spirit. So I was like, I'm going to dance. I'm going to dance every single day, because dancing releases endorphins, and endorphins make you happy, and happiness wards off depression, right? So that is literally like what I said to myself. And so every day during that time and now, I make it a point, literally for the last 3 years, like I dance every day. I don't care
Wow.
what it is. It could be gospel, it could be R&B, it could be rap. You know, sometimes it's Coco Melon on the way to school. It doesn't matter, but I make it a point to dance every single day. And I sing as though people have purchased concert tickets.
Oh my
I
God,
sing
I'm
the
gonna.
lyrics loud and wrong. I don't
Where are
care.
we doing that? In the shower, in the car? It doesn't matter.
Wherever the spirit moves me is where I'm doing it. On the sidewalk, it doesn't matter. I'm in the grocery
I'm
store
gonna
at
need.
Target.
I'm gonna need a video. Please send it.
I'm sure I'll end up on one of these things somewhere because I'm dancing crazy in the
Oh
grocery
my
checkout line.
God.
But yeah, that's what I do. I dance every single day.
Oh my God. See, I can never predict this answer because they're particular to everybody. I love it. 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 Love it. I cannot top that one. All right. Thank you for that answer. So what else do you want to share with our listener? Last word before we depart today, really on the workplace, humanity, chaplaincy, spiritual practice. Any last word you want to share before we leave? Because this has been super empowering, I'm sure.
The last thing I think I would say is for anyone who's listened to this, whenever you find it, trust that you found this at the right time. I really hope that you found something in this, like I said, that nourishes your soul and just refills and refuels your spirit. But with regard to going into corporate environments where you may not necessarily feel seen or heard or valued, the one thing that I will offer is a saying from my grandmother, who used to always say that trouble don't last always. And so remember that wherever you are, it's a journey. You know, it's like you're in a lake, right? And there's rocks, and that you happen to step on a rock, but you're just on this rock for right now. You know, the goal is to get down the stream. And so where you are doesn't necessarily mean that that's where you'll be. So think about how you can take what lessons you can take and what things you need to give. Because I feel like we're all where we're supposed to be. Otherwise, we'd be somewhere else. And we're where we're supposed to be to get something and to give something. It's this whole idea of reciprocity, like it's an ecosystem, if you will. So your workplace feeds you and you feed the workplace. I believe that the sooner that we can understand what we're supposed to get and what we're supposed to give, the faster we can get out and go on to the next thing. So try to reshape your pain in your moment to think about what you're supposed to give and what you're supposed to get, and also then start to dream about the next place where you want to go.
Oh my God. I couldn't say it any better. It's almost like there's always a lesson in every pain. So that's my short version of everything that you just mentioned, but you said it so beautifully. Thank you so much, Apriel. It was a pleasure having you on the Up Your Confidence podcast. I'm going to have all the information on the show note, how you can be a member of Blagile if you are a Scrum Master or you are even interested to be in the agile community, because that has been it's about leadership. It's about really how we can elevate our voices. So thank you so much, April.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.